Hello. Today I'd like to taste with you a classic Napa Valley Cabernet Sauvignon. So this is Silver Oak's 2016 Cabernet Sauvignon, and this is their Napa Valley bottling of that. It's worth mentioning that Silver Oak actually really only make two wines. I mean, they have made individual vineyard bottlings in the past, but they don't at present. So they have one wine from the Alexander Valley in Sonoma County and one from the Napa Valley. Now, both these wines are labelled as Cabernet Sauvignon. The Alexander Valley, which is the slightly cheaper of the two wines, is actually 100% Cabernet Sauvignon. However, the wine from the Napa Valley is in fact a Bordeaux Blend, which will have 80% of Cabernet Sauvignon in it, or thereabouts, but the blend allows some Merlot, some Cabernet Franc, some Petit Verdot, and in fact in this case a little bit of Malbec in there. So actually the blend in 2016, if I remember correctly, is 78.9% Cabernet Sauvignon, 15% Merlot, 3.5% Cabernet Franc, 2.3% Petit Verdot, and 0.3% of Malbec, so only a tiny amount of Malbec. The way American wine labelling laws are, it's completely fine to label this wine as a Cabernet Sauvignon. You're allowed up to, I think it's 25% of other varieties in there, and still to label it as a varietal wine. Silver Oak was founded in 1972 by somebody called Ray Duncan, and Ray had been visiting friends of his, the Novaks, who own a winery called Spotswood up around Napa and Sonoma, and he had read that at that stage it was likely that wine consumption in the United States was going to increase, and he decided that he'd like to get into the game good and early. So he went out and, with his friends the Novaks initially, invested in vineyards in Sonoma County. So actually the first wine that was made in 1977 was referred to as a North Coast Cabernet Sauvignon, and it wasn't until 1979 that the first Napa Valley wine was produced. Now today both these wines have their own winery, one in Alexander Valley and one in Napa. But initially it was the winery's location in the Napa Valley, almost equidistant between the Silverado Trail and Oakville, that led to the name Silver Oak. They tried the name Meyer Duncan, which was a combination of Ray Duncan's name and that of Justin Meyer, his winemaker, and that hadn't really worked. So Silver Oak it became. Now this particular wine is a blend of a number of different vineyards from within the Napa Valley. So the principal vineyard is one called Soda Canyon Ranch. It's interestingly located because it's actually pretty much at the intersection of four different AVAs. So you've got Stag's Leap, you've got Coombsville, you've got Atlas Peak and the Oak Knoll district, all converging at about this spot. So as a result you have a variety of different soils. So you have plenty of friable, free-draining volcanic soils for Cabernet Sauvignon to grow on, but then at the same time you have heavier, richer, sort of cooler clay soils which are better suited to the growing of Merlot. As well as Soda Canyon Ranch, other vineyards use the Jump Rock Vineyard, and then there's a vineyard called the Navone Vineyard, which actually is owned by a partner rather than by Silver Oak themselves, but this is somebody with whom they've partnered for 40 years, so there's some real consistency sourcing here. There are other vineyards that they will include in the blend, coming from Atlas Peak and from the Oak Knoll district. I've got very little information about the winemaking as far as these wines are concerned. So I think we can assume these are wines that are going to be hand-picked. I can't see this being machine harvested. I think we can assume that it will be destemmed, it will be crushed, and the fermentation will go on either in tanks or vats, but none of this is specified in the notes that I've seen for this wine. I should imagine there would be a period of probably about 3 weeks of vatting, during which period alcoholic fermentation will finish. There will probably have been pumping over quite regularly to keep the cap of skins wet and to control the extraction of tannins, flavours and aromas from that. Possibly there will also have been rack and returns, délestage, where you take all the juice out of the tank and return it to the top. It's slightly different from a pump over in that you're not continually cycling, you're removing it and then putting it back in. But as I say, all this is supposition, but that would be pretty normal winemaking practice for a wine of this sort, and probably that's why they haven't mentioned it in the notes. What they do concentrate on, however, is the approach to blending, because here they will start blending the wine in the December following harvest. So not unusual that wines of this type will be blended after they've aged in barrels, and different barrels will be selected. So the selection of individual barrels will be important to the final wine. However, at Silver Oak, they believe it's easier to create a blend when you can actually see the different terroir characteristics in each individual lot of wine before it goes into barrel. So the blending is a long process, takes about 6 weeks from the December following vintage. Final wine is then put into barrel. Now, Silver Oak only use American oak for this wine, and 80% of that is new. So American oak tends to be more powerful than French oak. New oak obviously has more flavours and aromas. Now, as I say, this is 80% new oak, with the balance, the remaining 20%, being second year oak. So even then, that's not fully seasoned oak. That will still be lending oak character to the wine, as well as allowing it to oxidise gently. So I think we can expect the oak character on this wine to be fairly forceful. The one thing I would say is, yes, this is American oak, but actually this is air dried American oak, so it will have more finesse than the sort of barrels that are used for bourbon, where they'll be kiln dried. But you've still got the more flavoursome white oak being used, and actually that's very appropriate. In fact, Silver Oak own their own cooperage, they make their own barrel. But as I say, American oak, Quercus albus, white oak, is I suppose a silver oak, isn't it? Hence, that's a very appropriate material for this wine to age in. The blended wine then spends 24 months aging in these American oak barrels. I don't have an indication of the size, but I think it's probable that these are going to be 225 litre barriques. Following bottling, wine then remains in the winery for 18 months prior to release, just to allow it to marry and for it to overcome any bottle shock it may have suffered. So let's have a look at the wine, shall we? This is a deep and dark ruby red. It's got a red rim. It's slightly paler at the rim, but it's not really browning as of yet. The wine has 14.2% alcohol, and it's clinging fairly readily to the side of the glass, and yes, there it's starting very slowly to create some quite obvious tears on the side of the glass. So let's see what we make of the aroma, shall we? There's a rich, high-toned black fruit there, but it is somewhat hidden behind some really quite obvious, slightly earthy, but really quite cedary oak notes. Yes, I think the high-toned cassis notes are slightly being smothered there, and what you're actually seeing is more of a sort of a blackberry, black plum, perhaps hints of black cherry, but the fruit is being framed really quite nicely by this quite powerful oak. So let's have a taste, shall we? The palate, the juicy cassis, perhaps bramble and black plum notes are again framed by this sort of fine cedary oak. There's a little bit of sort of dusty drying note to it. There are hints of bitterness giving ideas of a coffee note. There's a really good concentration, but at the same time, once you've got past the quite warming, rounded alcohol that's filling out the back palate, and there are sort of chocolatey notes there are notes of graphite, and then you're coming to more lifted black fruit notes, and again that's where you're starting to get notes of cassis, but that cassis is being tempered there by notes of graphite. This is a wine with plentiful fresh black fruit, which is all being restrained and framed, a fine cedary structure. The wine lasts really well, and the black fruit is lasting beautifully on the finish. There is some sort of licoricey concentration there as well. This is a wine that's coming up for 8 years old. It's been aging in a magnum. Magnums will age more slowly than bottles. I think it's possible that this is a wine that still has a little way to go to show it its optimum, because the oak structure still has a firm grip on the fruit. I think with another 2 or 3 years that will start to smooth out, and the fruit will start to grow out of this, and I think you'll get a bit more of the sort of a freshness and more of a lifted cassis note with more fresh blackcurrant and black cherry becoming apparent. Yes, I imagine probably this 3 or 4 years, and that it would then continue to be, very drinkable for another 10 years probably at least. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you found this video of interest. If you've enjoyed the tasting, do please press the like button. If you want to sign up and follow us, that would be fantastic. We'd love to have your support there. If you want to find this wine in a shop near you, or find out about pricing or anything else related to that, there is a link in the comments box below. If you have any comments, any feedback you'd like to give, we would love to see that left as well. We'd be really interested to hear what you think about the wines we're looking at, the tastings we're doing, or anything else related to that. If you have any friends who you think might like to watch the video, please feel free to share it. But most importantly, do please try and find some time and come and join us for another tasting in the very near future, won't you? Thanks again. Bye for now.